Welcome to part 2 of our Pledge Challenge Input Application Introduction. This part of the overview of this application will consist of a walkthrough of the main functionality. Please note that this version of this application was developed solely for demonstration purposes and was never intended to be used in a production setting. Having said that, we believe this demonstration version shows the functionalities that would be required to define competitive pledge challenges. So let's get started.
The application front page conveys the impression that this is a website for a single campaign. However, it is actually a generic software application that could be used to support many kinds of pledge challenge campaigns. Let's start by looking at some of the application functionality. This first page gives a good introduction as to what this application is all about. Let's take a look at a campaign. The first thing we see is a list of existing campaigns with its name, type, the domain that applies to the domain type, and the start and end dates. Now let's take a look at a specific campaign in more detail. What we see here again is the campaign name, the type, domain, the causes, could be more than one, the campaign start and end dates. Now let's take a look at some of the pledges for this campaign. Here we see a number of practice pledges that have been entered for this particular campaign. We can see it includes things like the name, the type, what campaign it pertains to, what's the campaign type, what is the domain of the pledge, which could be a subdomain of the campaign, what is the level of the competitor, which is basically a domain underneath the pledge domain, what is the cause that any pledges would go to, and if there's any qualifying limit to have the units of activity counted for this particular pledge. Let's look at this pledge in a little more detail. The original amount pledge per winner, the number of winners, they could be the top 5, it could be the top 1, whatever, and the original maximum pledge amount and the overall max pledge amount depending on how many participants, etc. Let's go back to the list of pledges and let's click on to start a new pledge. The first thing we have to do is define the domain level that the pledge challenge will pertain to. In this case, let's pick school district. Then click next to go to the next item. In the last screen, we said that the pledge domain for this pledge challenge would be school district. Now we have to say which school district we are talking about. In this case, we would start with a multi-screen sequence. I'm only showing the final result. We would select first the country, then within the country the state, within the state the county, and then within the county the applicable school district. In this particular case, the country is USA, the state is New Jersey, the district is, or the county is Union, and our school district is the Scotch Plains Fanwood School District. The next step is to define who the competitors are within the pledge domain. In this case, you only see those levels that are within the selected domain. In this particular case here, we could choose the school or the class or the student. In this case, we are selecting the class. We then click Next to go to the next step. In this step, we have to state what determines who the winner of the competition is. Here are the current choices of competition type. The winner is the competitor with the highest result within the challenge domain, or the winner is the competitor with the highest average result per student within the challenge domain. That's if it's a class or a school, etc. The third is the first competitor to achieve some stated goal within the challenge domain. And the fourth category is the winner is the first competitor to achieve a stated average result per student goal within the challenge domain. And finally, the fifth is just simple participation. Anyone who participates is a winner. In our particular case, we're selecting the max average. That means this would be the class within the school district that has the highest average number of hours read per student. We then click on Next to go to the next step. We then state how many winning classes there can be. In this case, we are saying the top 2 classes with the highest average number of hours read per students are both winners. Now we have to state what is the pledge amount that will be donated in the name of each winner. The previous screen assumed that the pledge would only be paid once per winner, regardless of how many units of activity they had. That is not typical of readathons, bikeathons, etc., where the pledge amount is multiplied by the number of units of activity performed. The functionality needs to be expanded so that the user can specify whether they are pledging one value per winner or one value for each unit of activity of the winner. Next, we have to specify whether there is any minimum number of units of activity that are required for a participant's results to be counted. We need to add some additional functionality here to specify whether we're talking about a minimum number of hours for competitor or the minimum number of hours of a team member of the competing team. For example, are we talking about the total number of hours read by a class, or are we talking about that a particular student within the class has to reach a certain minimum number of hours for that student's hours to be counted? The last step of defining a pledge challenge is to give the pledge challenge a descriptive name, and then click on Next. This brings the user to a narrative summary of their pledge challenge. For example, it would say you're adding a new pledge based on a challenge named the best average hours read per student. The winner is the class with the highest average number of hours read per student within the school district Scotch Plains Vanwood, County Union, State, Province, New Jersey, and Country, USA. Hours will be counted only for classes whose number of hours exceed the minimum qualification of 10 hours. The best 2 classes will be declared winners. The total challenge pledge amount is the challenge pledge amount times the number of winners. The pledge amount will be donated to the cause of Mary's Meals in the names of the winner. We'll stop this demonstration here, although, as mentioned, there are several other areas of functionality, such as capturing the number of hours read, calculating who the winners of each pledge challenge are, and collecting the donation sums of the various pledge challenge donors. But this should suffice to give one an understanding of what this application includes.